Penguin Random House Audio presents X by Sue Grafton. Read for you by Judy Kaye. In the beginning. Teddy Xanakis would have to steal the painting. What other choice did she have? She believed it was a Turner, a possibility she couldn't confirm unless she shipped it to the Tate in London, where the Turner scholars, Evelyn Joel and Martin Butlin in particular, could make a judgment about its authenticity. Unfortunately, the painting was currently in the basement of the house that was now solely in Ari's name, where it had sat for years, unrecognized and unappreciated. She might have blamed herself for the oversight, but why on earth would anyone expect to find a priceless painting in such homely company? She and Ari had bought the house when they moved from Chicago to Santa Teresa, California. The estate had been owned by the Carpenters, who passed it down from generation to generation until the last surviving family member died in 1981, having neglected to write a will. The estate attorney had locked the doors and put the house up for sale. Teddy and Ari had bought it fully equipped and fully furnished, right down to the rolls of toilet paper in the linen closet and 3 sets of sterling flatware in the silver vault. The antiques, including several exquisite Persian carpets, were appraised as part of the purchase price, but in the process a small group of paintings had been overlooked. The attorney had paid the taxes owed, handing the IRS and the state of California the hefty sums to which they were entitled. Teddy and Ari had made use of a number of the antiques in furnishing the mansion's first and second floors. The rest they'd moved into the complex of storage rooms below. The paintings were in a cabinet in an upright rack, each leaning against its neighbor. Teddy had come across them shortly after they moved in. Over the years she'd developed an eye for fine art, but these paintings were drab and uninteresting. The subject matter was classical: nymphs, mythological figures, Roman ruins, a seascape, heavy-legged peasant women bringing in the harvest, a still life with a dead duck and rotting fruit, and a floral arrangement in colors she didn't care for. It was after she and Ari divorced, and they'd both signed off on the settlement, that she'd realized one of the paintings she'd so carelessly dismissed might be an original of Joseph Mallard William Turner, whose work sold at auction in the millions. Her rationalization for the contemplated theft was as follows. Number 1. Ari had no appreciation of art. The collection she'd put together comprised the works of a group known as Les Petits Maîtres, minor impressionists like Bartoli, Kaye, Jacques Lambert, and Pierre-Louis Casaubon, whose paintings were still affordable because the artists themselves had never achieved the legendary stature of Cézanne, Renoir, Monet, Van Gogh, and their ilk. The collection had already been awarded to her in the settlement, so why not this one small additional painting? Number 2. If Ari realized the true value of the painting, they'd only get into another wrangle as to which of them was entitled to it. If they couldn't agree, which seemed inevitable, a judge could force a sale and divide the money equally between them. In this one tiny instance, money didn't interest her. The Turner was a treasure she'd never see again in her lifetime, and she was determined to have it. Number 3. Ari had already screwed her over once, quite literally, by having a dalliance with Stella Morgan, the woman Teddy had once considered her best friend. Stella's husband, Douglas, was the architect who designed the remodel of a condominium Ari and Teddy owned in downtown Santa Teresa. It was while he was overseeing construction that he was stricken with a fatal heart attack. Months passed. After the remodeling work was finished, Ari and Teddy continued to see Stella, who had adjusted to her widowhood as best she could, with all that money as compensation. Then came disaster. That September, Teddy spent a weekend in Los Angeles, attending a seminar at the Getty on the plein-air painters. On Monday, when she arrived home, she hadn't been in the house an hour before an acquaintance rang her up and gave her a blow-by-blow. Teddy's options were limited: fight, flight, play dead, or screw him. She'd slapped Ari with divorce papers within the week. He got the house, which she couldn't afford to maintain in any event. She got the flat in London. He got a sizable chunk of jewelry, including the necklace he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. She freely confessed she was bitter about that. The stocks and bonds had been sorted out between them. The division was fair and square, which pissed her off no end. There was nothing fair and square about a cheating husband who'd boffed her best friend. In a further cruel twist of fate, in the division of their assets, Teddy had been awarded the very condominium where the architect had breathed his last. More real estate was the last thing she needed. Her broker priced the condo at $1 million plus and assured her of a quick sale. After the apartment sat for 18 months without a nibble, Teddy decided the place would be more attractive if it were properly furnished and decorated. She'd hired a Santa Teresa stager named Annabelle Wright and instructed her to cherry-pick the items in Ari's basement for that purpose. He agreed because the hostilities had gone on long enough and he wanted her out of his hair. Once the condo was suitably tarted up, Teddy had hired a photographer to do a shoot, and the resulting 4-color brochure was circulated among real estate agents in Beverly Hills. A well-known actor had snapped it up, all cash, no contingencies, and a 10-day escrow. The deal was done, and all that remained was for the two of them to sign off so Teddy could collect her check. In the meantime, and this was Teddy's final rationalization, number 4. Ari and Stella had gotten married. Teddy had moved to Bel Air by then, living in the guest house of a friend who'd taken pity on her and invited her to stay for an unspecified period of time. It was during the 10-day escrow, while papers were being drawn up, that someone spotted the painting that appeared in the brochure, a seascape shown hanging above the fireplace in the living room. This was a dealer who owned a gallery on Melrose and had an unerring eye for the finer things in life. He glanced at the photograph and then brought it closer to his face. A nanosecond later, he picked up the phone and called Teddy, who'd long been a customer of his. "This looks like a Turner, darling. Could it possibly be genuine?" "Oh, I doubt it. That's been sitting in the basement for years." "Well, if I were you, I'd send color photographs to the Tate to see if someone can establish the provenance. Better yet, take the painting yourself and see what they have to say. What harm could it do?" Heeding his advice, she decided to retrieve the painting and have it examined by the experts. She returned to Santa Teresa, where she signed the final papers on the sale, and then drove from the broker's office to the condominium. She'd been told the new owner would be taking possession the following weekend, as soon as the place had been emptied. So when she let herself in, she was astonished to see the apartment had already been stripped to the bare walls. No furniture, no art, no Persian carpets, and no accessories. She'd called Ari, who was gleeful. He said he'd known she'd dash in and confiscate any items she took a fancy to, so he'd made a preemptive strike and emptied the place. If she wanted to dispute the move, she could have her attorney contact his. As she no longer had access to the painting, she approached the photographer and asked to see his proofs. There were several clear shots of the painting, which was really quite lovely now that she had the chance to examine it more closely. It was a seascape with a flat beach and a sky streaked with clouds. In the background, cliffs were visible, probably the Margate Cliffs, a Turner favorite. In the foreground, a boat appeared to have foundered. The boat itself, she learned later, was known as a xebec, a small 3-masted ship having an overhanging bow and stern, and both square and lateen sails. The tonal quality was delicate, gradations of browns and grays with touches of color here and there. She asked for and was given 4 prints. At that point, she realized she'd better buckle down to work. She moved back to town and embarked on a comprehensive self-education. She studied the J.M.W. Turner Catalogue Raisonné and any other biographical information she could get her hands on. Turner had died in 1851. The bulk of his artistic output he'd left as a bequest to the National Gallery in London. 318 paintings went to the Tate and National Gallery, and 35 oil sketches to the British Museum. The remaining 200 plus pages.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?